Hi folks, Paul here, and welcome to episode 3 of Bushcraft for Beginners. Now this episode is going to be entirely about clothing and what it is we wear when we're out doing bushcraft, or even if you're out hill walking, hiking, whatever it might be, just general outdoor wear. I'm going to talk you through my experience, what I wear currently. I'll go through the different kind of seasons and what I wear through the different seasons, and give you my thoughts on certain materials and certain ways of doing things. This is just going to be my experience, so take it with a grain of salt. I've only recently started looking at what it is I wear and trying to make it better. For quite a while now, I've just kind of gotten by with the bare minimum, so I'm working on my clothing situation myself, but I'm going to share with you guys what it is I've learned as I've gone down that road. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. Okay guys, so I'm going to start talking you through my winter kit. That's what I'm wearing at the moment. I tend to wear it kind of sort of late autumn through winter into kind of early spring. And the reason for that is I can adjust what I'm wearing to kind of match the temperatures that we might expect during that period. Now it's important to note the whole idea here is about layering. What you're essentially doing is trying to create effective layers, and those layers will all do a different thing. So we'll start on the outside layer here. What I have is a vintage sort of canvas smock. I was given this by a very good buddy of mine. 1960s I believe it is, and like I say, it's like a heavy duty canvas type fabric, and I've treated it with Fabsil in the past to help with water runoff, and it does an excellent job. An important thing to note about your outer layer is having it either windproof or waterproof or both. Your outer layer tends to be what's going to take the brunt of the weather. So for me, it's important to have one that's windproof and waterproof. I'm not worried about it being breathable, because I'm getting so hot to the point where I need to breathe. I'll just take it off and use my layer underneath. So as I say, these are called smocks, and they usually run quite long. You can't see it, but it's probably down to about my thigh. They usually have really good big pockets. I've got one on the chest here, and I've got one in the back, and means you can access stuff really easily. It's there, easy to get into. Another important thing to note is the collars around the wrist here are cuffed, and they're elasticated. Now this might be not to everyone's taste, but it is for me. The reason being, I don't like having kind of a big baggy bit of fabric below my wrist. Reason being, it'll catch on stuff. You're letting valuable air out that you've trapped and warmed up, and for me it just makes life easier having it tight. You'll also see on my wrist here I have what's known as like a neck scarf. You can see it's basically just a tube of cotton fabric, and has a whole different host of uses, but for me, I usually keep it on my wrist so I can rub my boogers on it when I've got a runny nose and I'm in the middle of doing something, but it can be used for a whole host of other different things. Obviously it can be used as a scarf, it can be put up against the neck here to stop air from getting out. Again, you'll see a common theme here is preventing the air your body is heating up from escaping your layering system, because it's your body heating up air that's going to keep you warm. So this as a scarf around your neck is quite tight, it's elasticated, so you get a good seal that way. It can also be worn as a hat, it can also be used to filter water, make charcloth, all sorts of different things. Really, really handy things to have on your wrist. It weighs basically nothing, and good for getting rid of the snot. So this is obviously a very retro piece of kit, and for me, I like the look of it, I like the comfort of it, I like the durability of it, but it might not be for everyone's taste, and occasionally I do like to use something more modern. The good thing about old school fabrics is they're very heavy duty. They can take a beating. I know I can rub up against trees and not tear this. I know I can sit by the fire and it's not going to melt if a spark lands on it. Stuff like that is what I love about the old school fabrics. But the new school fabrics have their own different qualities, and I'll show you my alternative top layer in a synthetic sort of form. So this would be the synthetic top layer I would wear. Again, a whole host of different kind of uses, and you'll find yourself when you're looking into what it is you want to wear and what it is you're trying to achieve, that different materials do different things. The old school fabrics, like I say, are tougher, more durable, whereas the new school fabrics, the more synthetic stuff, tends to have better efficiency, but isn't as durable. So this here again is a top I was given by my good friend. As you can see, very different from the smock. Lots of bright colours, some reflective bits and pieces, loads of pockets, multiple pockets, all in very handy places, and very big pockets as well. You'll notice it's got a kind of synthetic outer layer here. Now I'm not entirely sure what this is, but it's synthetic and it sheds water, so it's obviously some kind of some sort of water resistant material. And on the inside you can see it's got a nice fleecy lining in there, nice and soft. And depending on what it is I'm doing, I'll wear this in more extreme weather. So say I was going hiking up a hill, I'm much more likely to wear this. It's brighter, it's more obvious, and it does shed rain better than the smock. But that being said, it's not something I'm going to sit by the fire in, because if a spark lands on this, it's just going to melt it. So pros and cons, and it's entirely up to you what it is you decide to go down. Okay folks, so this is my mid layer. As you can see, it's a big kind of jumper, and what it is a wool rich jumper. It's 100% wool. Wool is a very, very good insulator, and combined with something that's waterproof and windproof, then you end up with a really nice layering system where the wool will make very, very good use of your body heat, the heat you're putting out using your body. It'll capture that, and the windproof top layer will allow that heat to stay in the sort of micro environment you've created around yourself. Now there isn't anything too special about this. Like I say, 100% wool, lots of pockets, again, cuffs that kind of tie up nice and tight so you're not going to get them stuck on anything. And again, quite long. I like having it quite long, so if I'm sitting down, you know, I'm basically sitting on my layers. So I've got my outer layer and my mid layer underneath my butt, so my butt isn't getting cold. Just like, you know, silly little things like that make a difference. When you're sitting on the ground for a long time, the damp and the cold will soon kind of seep into your body, even if it's through your butt. Again, nothing too special. Let's have a look at my my base layer. Okay folks, so this is my base layer, and some of you guys will be familiar with this. This is merino wool, a very particular type of wool. I believe it's like a hollow fibre type fabric, which means it's incredibly good at insulating, and it's one of the best kind of base layers you can have for that reason. Depending on what it is I'm doing, if I'm working hard, if I'm sweating, I'll have something more breathable. I won't have wool, I'll have like a synthetic top that will sort of wick sweat away from me. Although that being said, the merino wool does do a really good job of wicking sweat and moisture from your body as well. Again, I'm not going to be worried about sitting by the fire with this. You know, I'm not going to be worried about it melting. It's really, really cheap, and you can buy them online without much of a problem. A lot of them have different pockets. This one has a hood as well. Things like that make a nice difference. But as a base layer, I would recommend this to anyone. I used to be the kind of guy that would go around in a cotton t-shirt, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've done it for like 6 or 7 years, and it did me fine. But when you make the change into looking at your clothing and looking at how you can make it better for yourself, then merino wool is a very, very good option. Now this is my base layer, so underneath this I have absolutely nothing, and I don't really feel that I need anything else. This does the job perfectly for me. And again, it's about looking at it as your protection. You know, all the clothes you wear is essentially your protection from the elements, and you want to make sure you've got that as good as you can get it. And as I said at the beginning, I'm still learning my way through this, and I've only just started really investing in kit that is up to the job. All that being said though, you do not have to spend an absolute fortune, so you can pick up like a merino wool base layer for maybe £10 or £15 on eBay or Amazon, or in a shop like Aldi or Lidl, or even an outdoor shop will have them. £10 or £15 for probably the best base layer you can have, in my opinion. My wool rich top I picked up second hand on eBay. It cost £40 I believe it was, and when they first came out they were hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So you're picking up something that's it's really, really good, but even if you're picking it up second hand, it's still going to work the same. And I've no shame in saying that I'll happily wear second hand clothes or whatever if I can get them cheaper, because I'm not someone that's well off. So if I can get something for cheaper that performs at high end specs, then that's what I'll do. Same with the synthetic materials. Stuff like Gore-Tex and that can be quite expensive, but you can get Gore-Tex jackets and stuff in military surplus shops, or you can get cheap online ones, whatever it might be. I made the mistake of not investing in my clothing in the beginning, and I paid for it in the form of being wet and not being able to get dry, of having really, really thin materials that just let the heat from my body escape, and I was cold, and synthetic materials as well that I like I say, I burnt many holes in, particularly my trousers. And speaking of trousers, let's get on to my lower half and talk about those as well. Okay folks, so looking at my my lower half, what I've got on here is a pair of Falraven Barnet Pro trousers, the G100 material, or G1000 sorry material. Now Falraven is quite expensive, and I really had to kind of struggle with myself to convince myself to buy these. Before I had these, I was wearing really thin Kraghopper trousers, and I loved them, don't get me wrong, I loved them, but they weren't very good at keeping insulation in. The stitching was terrible, and they would burn very easily. They did dry very quickly because they were so thin, and that was a benefit to me because I was living in a very wet place. So like I say, there's pros and cons. This is the most expensive thing I'm wearing, and I've not had them for a very long time, but for the time I've had them, I absolutely love them. They're a very heavy duty material. The G1000, I'm not quite sure of the blend of fabrics or whatever you might call it, but it's a very heavy duty material, and when you pay kind of a higher price for something, you do get a better quality, there's no doubt about it. So these are a raw length. I haven't actually cut them to length, but they're raw length, meaning they come very long and you cut them to the size you want, which is a nice touch. They have really good pockets, sort of snap buttons, very big, and you'll notice instead of expanding out the way, they have a seam here which allows them to go up the way, so when you're walking you don't have stuff hanging off your leg here swinging about. It's all at the front, so the momentum is keeping it going backwards and forwards. Little designs like that and ideas like that just make life so much easier. These also have the ability to have knee pads in them. I personally don't need that. I don't mind leaning on the ground, but if you're doing demonstrations or if you're working in them or whatever it might be, then it's really not a bad idea. And lots of very cool pockets on them. They have a dedicated kind of saw and axe pocket here, or you can even put a knife in there. But my hatchet will fit in there quite nicely, and you can just kind of wear that around. You can also get a saw in there, so it opens from the top and the bottom, and that way you can kind of get a handle through, or you can seal the bottom and just have a saw in there. Again, expensive, maybe £115 they were, but totally worth it in my opinion. If these don't last me 3 or 4 years at least, I'll be very disappointed. And they have like a windproof element to them, and they're also fairly water resistant, but they dry out fairly well as well. They don't dry out as quickly as my old trousers, which were a thinner material, but they do dry out relatively quickly. So that being said, that's all there really is on the bottom half to talk about. I don't wear any fancy pants or anything like that, so just these trousers and that's it. You'll also notice I have here some gloves strapped to me. These are a new purchase I just received the other day. and the reason for these is for when I'm working with the fire, so that I can handle pots and logs and all the rest of it. Pure leather gloves, really thick and tough. Nice way of protecting your hand and making sure you don't burn yourself. And they always stay, or are always going to stay, attached to my belt. One of those things I really neglected buying them, or thinking about buying them, but it's one of those things that just makes life easier and it's worth having. Now that we've talked about the trousers, we'll have a quick look at my my boots, and I'll talk you through those. Okay folks, so as you've probably noticed by now, I'm wearing full leather boots. These are Altberg Defenders. They were a current issue for the army. I don't know if they're still using them or not, but you know, anything that's good enough for the army is generally good enough for the public. I picked these up pretty cheap second hand, and they were like new. I think they were about £40 maybe. As you can see, full leather all the way up, very nice ankle support, made in such a way that you've got very nice movement as well, so you don't feel like you're stretching or the leather's tight on you. So they're very comfortable, very water resistant, not waterproof. Because they're leather, the water will kind of seep through these unless you treat them with a wax or something like that, or a polish. The water will seep through these, but what that basically means is they're breathable, so your feet can breathe. And as you can see here, this here is actually sweat seeping out of the boot because of the socks I've got on. And the socks I'm wearing are merino wool socks, much like my base layer, a hollow fibre, so very, very good at keeping heat in, very comfortable, and very good for your feet as well. They keep them nice and clean. But as you can see, the sweat generated by those socks in these boots is coming out the side here. So they're definitely breathable to an extent. I do have wet feet sometimes because of the heat these socks produce. So I find pure merino wool socks and full leather boots to be the best combination I've found yet. I did for a very, very long time wear the sort of fabric-y material hiking boots. They're kind of lightweight, and they're made of fabric and have kind of like suede around them and stuff like that. I have burnt through so many pairs of them, it's unbelievable. Whereas one pair of these, and I can walk through brambles without worrying about tearing them up. The salt doesn't corrode them or anything like that. You do have to kind of maintain them, so I put oil on mine every so often just to keep the leather nice and supple. But apart from that, it doesn't really take much. They have a Vibram sole as well, and they're kind of well known for being really good. I would say they're quite slippy. They're a very hard sole, so they're quite slippy on wet rocks and stuff like that. But what it does mean is they're very hard wearing, so it'll take you a long time to burn through these. So that's all I wear on my my feet. Altberg Defenders merino wool socks. I would definitely encourage people to go for leather over the fabric-y material. They are heavier and they do take a little bit more maintenance, but in my opinion it's worth every bit of effort just for the toughness, the durability and the waterproofness these possess. So that's those. Now I will take you up and we'll talk a bit about my my summer kit. Okay folks, so that is my winter kit, and I kind of adjust the layers accordingly. On a day like today I could get away with just my my wool jumper and that would be it. I don't really need the smock, it's not cold enough for that. So I can kind of take layers off and adjust accordingly. It's important when you're wearing your materials and you're out exploring the woods that you, if you get hot and you start to sweat, you start taking layers off. You do not want to get your base layers wet, and you do not want to have the wind exposed to those wet base layers, because it will wick heat away from you very, very quickly, and that's an important thing to avoid. It's a very, very good way of getting very cold very quickly. So if you start sweating, take layers off. Now that we've looked at the winter layers, let me change into my summer gear, and we'll talk about that. Folks, so as you can see, this is my my summer wear, and really nothing special going on here. What I have is a quick drying pair of shorts, and I have some moccasins. So, like I say, the shorts, nothing special. They're quick drying material, and the reason I like to wear shorts when I'm out in the woods or doing bushcraft or even out hiking or whatever it might be, is because of the versatility in them. So essentially what it means is I can, take off my moccasins and walk through a river up to knee height, and not have to worry about drying clothes later on or anything like that. And for me it feels more natural. You've got the wind, you've got the elements against your skin, and there's an enjoyable aspect in there that I think people need to experience more of, and it's something we'll cover in a future episode, I'm sure. Same with the moccasins. We'll take a closer look at those in a minute, but the idea behind them, that you can feel the ground beneath you, and that you're feeling every little bit and piece of stick underneath your foot or whatever it might be, just opens up a whole new experience. Okay, so on my feet during the summer months, what I quite often like to wear is these. Now these are a pair of moccasins made for me by the very, very talented Rob over at Ashfield's Leather. And I'll put a link to his website in the description. He makes some amazing stuff, and he makes these. He measures. You have to send him the measurements of your feet, and he makes them perfectly measured to your foot. So no two are the same, and each pair are made to kind of fit comfortably for you as an individual. And I find these to be absolutely amazing when I'm out. I really, really like them. I love going barefoot, but at the same time I'm not very keen on stabbing, pine needles into my feet and all the rest of it. And these are a really, really nice mixture of being able to feel what's going on underneath you, feel the ground, and enjoy that aspect of being outdoors, but also have that layer of protection. Not to mention these are incredibly hard wearing, really, really tough leather, very beautifully stitched, and of course the sole can be replaced as and when you need to, and you've always got the top here for reusing, so there's something that can last for years and years and years to come. They can be treated. You can rub mink oil on them to help kind of make them more water resistant. For me, however, I don't really see that as a problem. If I get mine wet, because they're leather, I can just dry them by the fire. Again, another kind of joy of natural materials is having that ability to have them next to or close to fire for drying out, for staying warm, whatever it might be, and not having to worry about them burning or melting. So, fantastic moccasins. Huge shout out to Rob, and if it's the sort of thing you guys are interested in, especially as a guy who's interested in primitive technology, it's well worth checking out. So again, the link to these will be in the description below. Okay folks, so that's going to do it for today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Apologies it's not been super informative. There's a very, very kind of big rabbit hole you can go down when it comes to clothing, and the kind of different layering systems, and the conduction of heat and convection of heat and all the rest of it. And again, I'm aiming this at beginners, and I feel like I've discussed the things that I would consider important as things I've learnt as time has gone on for myself, and things that I would recommend to you guys to try and get on as soon as possible to avoid the mistakes I made when I was starting out. So just to summarise, look at your layering system, make sure you've got a really good set of layers, a base layer, mid layer and outer layer. Base layer, nice and warm, will trap your body heat. Mid layer again, nice and warm, trapping body heat, being thicker, and the outer layer being windproof and waterproof, and also very durable because we're out in the woods. Same with the trousers, nice thick material, durable. You can get waterproof, you can get breathable. That's kind of down to you and what you feel like. And boots, again, something very hard wearing, long lasting, and you can treat however you want. So for me, that's leather boots or leather moccasins. So that's going to do it for today's episode. In the next episode we'll be covering tools, so we'll be looking at knives and saws and axes and things like that, and hopefully things will start getting a wee bit more exciting now that we're getting into the tools and more of the skills. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.